Confidence has returned to the Barbados economy. This from Central Bank Governor Dr. Delisle Worrell in a news conference with journalists that followed his official media release on the state of the Barbados economy. The Central Bank Governor is also saying that Barbadians have no reason to fear devaluation since Barbados has $1 billion in reserves. Ryan Broom reports.
Dr. Worrell says while investor confidence declined last year, it has now returned to the Barbados economy. Indications of this, he says, are pending private sector investments and public-private sector partnerships, collectively worth almost $3 billion over the next 3 years. The Central Bank Governor also says that tourism, international business and financial services, agro-processing and alternative energy are all government's priority areas for growth and revenue generation. He says greater emphasis will also be placed on investment, higher productivity, excellence in service, improvements in the quality of products and services, development of new products and services, and exploring new markets.
Confidence has come back. You know, the thing that we all recognize is that, and we have emphasized it in the central bank, that the way that we protect our exchange rate anchor, the way that we protect the value of our dollar, is by maintaining an adequate level of foreign reserves. So when we saw the rate at which foreign reserves were declining in the second half of last year, people naturally became nervous. You can't blame them, you know, and that's why we had to take very firm fiscal action, because that is the way you correct that situation.
During the hour-and-a-half-long press conference, he also acknowledged that the size of government was too large, given Barbados's financial situation, and that the planned major layoffs in the public sector are necessary to make government more efficient.
Yeah, I think there is a consensus, I would say a national consensus, even among us in the public sector. There is an appreciation of the fact that, you know, it's not sort of desirable. We don't need to be spending 1/3 of the national product in running the administrative, the government functions of the economy.
Dr. Worrell also does not foresee any further leakage in Barbados's foreign reserves, similar to what transpired in the first quarter of last year. He says the bank is constantly monitoring reserve levels to ensure that this does not recur. Ryan Broom, CBC News.
Government will be introducing legislation this year to address problems with the collection of monies owed to a number of government agencies, particularly the Value-Added Tax Department. Minister of Finance Chris Sinclair says the changes are part of plans to establish a central revenue authority.
It will be governed by a new act, and specific changes will be made to parent legislation governing some of those entities that do collect revenue, like the value-added tax, giving it more teeth, the Value-Added Tax Act, I should say, giving it more teeth, giving it more scope in relation to going after persons. But you will find that as we establish a new revenue function, a new workflow, better staffing, because that's one of the challenges that we face in many of these departments. Better staffing, not necessarily more staffing, but better staffing to ensure that we do the assessments, the investigations, that we know where people are, and that we get those resources in. You will find that over the next 6 months to a year, as that organization gets fully rolling with Inland Revenue, Licensing Authority, Customs and Excise, and of course the Value-Added Tax Department, you will find that there's going to be a lot more attentiveness to this issue of arrears.
Mr. Sinclair was responding to a caller on TV8's Morning Barbados program. He says plans are still in the works to merge government departments. He says a team set up under the Director of Finance and Economic Affairs has been examining that issue.
A lot of them have overlapping operations, focusing basically on the same thing but in different ways, and seeking to build efficiencies. So that is important, but I think even beyond that, statutory corporations in particular need to be a lot more vigilant, a lot more alert and efficient in the administration of their business. I am afraid a lot of that does not now take place. Many of them are running operational fiscal deficits, and the level of productivity, frankly, is not as strong and as high as we would require it.
Opposition leader Mia Mottley is again charging government that they can do more to lower inflation and prices on the whole by helping to reduce energy prices. Ms. Motley, speaking at the Foundation School, said the Frundle-Stewart administration can help change the island's cost structure, which is making a number of industries, including tourism, uncompetitive. She says, for example, the government can help ease the pain of Barbadians by adjusting fuel prices through the BNOC.
Even at reduced production, we can reduce the fuel oil price by 12 cents per kilowatt hour. We don't need the permission of Saul. We don't need the permission of the FTC. We don't need the permission of anyone except the cabinet of Barbados, because the cabinet of Barbados will direct as a maker of policy what the policy of pricing structure as shareholder and the sole shareholder of the option.
Also addressing the audience was retired First Black Bishop of Croydon, Sir Wilfred Wood. He said there is nothing wrong with complaining about issues, as this can highlight areas that are not functioning so that they can be fixed.
If the decisions being taken by those responsible are not working for us, and we can tell this by our pain and the pain of our neighbors, it becomes not only our right, but our duty to complain.
As he announced his retirement today, head of the Barbados Workers' Union, Senator Sir Roy Trotman, described the current industrial climate as the worst he has ever experienced. The BWU General Secretary, who took up that post in 1992, termed the current situation as awful, but believes that Barbados can overcome it. Sir Roy says his union has even been on the verge of calling for a strike, but had to carefully examine the situation.
I know that while a strike will serve to give the opportunity to vent, that if we are being allowed that opportunity and we find that we can go beyond an expression through the strike, then it may be better for us not to do anything to upset the even balance in the economy at this stage.
The outgoing General Secretary has worked at the Barbados Workers' Union for over 40 years. He will officially retire in August of this year, when the union's elections will also take place. Tony Moore-Bascom, the current Deputy General Secretary of the union, has been nominated by the BWU Executive Council as the next General Secretary. She says although the role is a challenging one, she will continue the fight for workers' rights.
There will never be the perfect moment, even if the climate was not as it is. There would never be that perfect moment to replace one who has served as outstandingly as Sir Roy has served. But I think that the commitment I have, and more so the commitment of those others that would have to work with me, is one that will make the difference in riding this tide.
The Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Associations of Barbados wants an urgent meeting of the full social partnership. General Secretary Dennis DePisa says the call is being made after reports surfaced that government's proposed 3,000 public sector layoffs will now include teachers and healthcare workers. Government and the two leading labour unions have had several meetings to discuss the proposed layoffs. The most recent round of talks was attended by Prime Minister Stewart. Mr. DePisa told CBC News C2SAB is disturbed by the recent news about the inclusion of teachers and healthcare workers and will be monitoring developments more closely going forward.
There is information that we have learnt that there is there seems to be some work ongoing at gathering information on persons within the realm of education and within education, those two specific areas that may be seen that they are also going on the channel of those temporary persons in those establishments who could find themselves under the hammer. So we are in the fact-finding mission, so to speak, or recouping, gathering information, and so far that is what has been drawn to our attention.
Pointing out that C2SAB is the umbrella body for the local trade union movement, Mr. DePisa is also querying its exclusion from the retrenchment talks. He says while the Congress wholeheartedly supports the two unions involved in those discussions, its input is equally important. Two Barbadians who were awarded the country's highest honor for their outstanding contributions to the country over the years were among 24 people receiving their insignia this morning. The ceremony took place at Government House. Peter Thorne has that story.
The National Honors and Awards ceremony lasted for 2.5 hours and was attended by Governor General Sir Elliot Belgrave, Prime Minister Frandl Stewart and several of his cabinet colleagues. They witnessed two of Barbados's most illustrious sons being knighted. One of them, Dr. Trevor Carmichael, was recognized for his outstanding contribution to the financial services sector, international business law practice, and for his philanthropic and voluntary activities.
One feels honored, obviously. One feels humble. And one feels happy. It's a great honor, but it's one, obviously, which I share with many people, with my family, my friends, my professional colleagues.
Also knighted was Professor Trevor Hassel, who has been acknowledged for his significant contribution to the medical profession, especially in cardiology.
I feel very honored. Yes, I'm excited, but I also feel very humbled. This recognition is one to which many have contributed.
The Companion of Honor of Barbados for Distinguished National Achievement and Merit was awarded to Professor the Honorable Bishnodat Prasad for his outstanding contribution to the regional and international public service, and the Honorable Peter Williams for his public service contribution to the legal profession and judiciary.
I think the highlight in my legal career was on the Court of Appeal, on writing the judgments, and some of them, like Boyce and Joseph, were groundbreaking judgments, which was upheld in the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Professor Eugene Barito, Keith Franklin, Dr. Shirley Jagru, and Grantley Smith were all awarded the Gold Crown of Merit.
I feel somewhat overwhelmed, to be honest. I think, as someone else has asked, it hasn't sunk in that I've now been awarded the Gold Crown of Merit, but at the same time I still feel very honored and very humbled that the government of Barbados has singled me out for this honor.
I'm deeply honored, and I'm humbled to know that to be recognized for such an esteemed award.
Other award categories include the Silver Crown of Merit, the Barbados Service Star, the Barbados Service Medal, and the Barbados Bravery Medal. Peter Thorne, CBC News.